Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ask an Atheist. And my guest this evening is Bryce. Bryce, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. How's it going?
I'm good. I'm a little. I'm excited about the show. A little nervous. I hope I can do it justice because you are a well-spoken, intelligent man. But I look very much forward to this. Um,
I appreciate the compliment. No pressure. I hope I can deliver on that pedestal that you put me on, but we'll see.
so you were saying in the green room, and if we could rehash this a little bit, you stepped away from YouTube. Is that correct? I can't hear you. Oh, I can't hear you. What the heck? Oh, this isn't good. Hello, can you hear me now? Check, check. Oh, this is not good. Sorry, stand by. We're having technical difficulties. Okay, I'm going to leave the studio and come back in. You,
I'm not sure if that was me or if that was Ethan.
there we go. I can hear you now.
You can hear me now. Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh,
So,
awesome. Sweet.
yeah, that
I
was
don't know
weird.
what that was.
No, I heard a buzzing sound. So,
All right, well, at least it fixed itself.
yeah, sorry about that. Maybe
Oh,
that could have
on
been
my end too.
my earbuds. But
Okay, so what I was saying was, from my understanding, you said you stepped away from YouTube for a little while.
yes.
So, would you
I
mind?
actually all social media.
So, would you mind expanding on that?
Yeah, it was just getting a little bit frustrating dealing with kind of the toxicity of the social media platforms that I was attached to, Facebook, Twitter. The YouTube show that I used to do. I'm still open to going back to that. That has more to do with like the people kind of behind the scenes just kind of falling
Mhm.
apart and people going their own ways, and also I was moving around a lot. I've been globe trotting, so to speak. I was overseas. I was in Europe for a while. I'm back in the States, about to move again. And so, what my lifestyle is, I move around a lot. I'm married to active duty military, so we
I
move a
was
lot.
just going to ask you that. What
Yeah.
caused you to travel so much?
Yeah,
Uh,
it's mostly work. Not mine, but my spouse. But yeah, as far as like the Facebook, Twitter, and all that stuff, number one, I'm not really interested in supporting the owners of those platforms anymore because I think they're evil and I think they're promoting misinformation and disinformation, mostly for profit, but for political reasons as well. And I'm just kind of not interested in, furthering that or participating in that anymore.
so, what are your thoughts on Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, removing fact checking?
I think that that's one of the things that caused me to actually leave Facebook. If you're going to sit there and have a platform that promotes misinformation and disinformation, which is essentially what that's doing. That's what you're doing when you're saying, I'm not going to allow fact checking anymore.
Right.
You're basically uh, allowing your platform to be a platform of fake news, so to speak. I hate that to use that term,
I
but
hate using that term too.
it's essentially what it is. You've basically, and he's doing it for political reasons, because
Right.
the people who don't like fact checking are the people who lie. And the people who lie, unfortunately, are mostly aligned with his brand of politics or brand of politics that he wants supporting him personally and his platform. And I'm just not into that.
Right.
I'm into reality. I'm into actual facts, not alternative facts. And in this day and age, I feel like people in positions of power like that, who have the ability to influence large swaths of people, the entire generations, kind of have a duty and a responsibility to make sure that they're promoting the well-being of humanity, which includes
Right.
accurate information, and people can't learn anything anymore. The internet used to be this place where you could go and you can learn things. It was the great equalizer, as long as you had the internet, as long as you had a public library, you can go, you can look stuff up, you can look up facts, things that you're maybe not taught in school or haven't learned. It was for fact checking for the most part, and then it became about social media, and then it became about just opinions, and that's just like your opinion, man, and facts aren't real, and like nothing is like, how do you tell the difference between reality and fantasy anymore? It's like it doesn't matter, and that's kind of what Facebook is doing.
So when do you think that shift started, when we started getting away from facts and reality into an era of misinformation?
Well, I don't want to make this entirely political, but it's gonna end up going there, so I might as well just rip the Band-Aid off. A lot of it started, around the time of Donald Trump's first election cycle, when he started using the term fake news. He didn't actually start using the term fake news. It was popularized before that by media outlets who were warning individuals watching that, hey, there's these fake stories out there masquerading as news, fake websites that look like CNN or that look like, ABC or whatever, that are promoting these stories. And we need to let our audience know this is not true. This is fake news. And so they were using that term, and it kind of became popular in a news cycle for a week or two, maybe a month. But then it was right around the time during the campaign season, and I don't know if it was the primaries or the general election, but the Trump campaign started using that term. They kind of co-opted that term.
They really did.
And they reappropriated it to mean any story about him that he didn't like the Access Hollywood tape, or what he said in Charlottesville, or anything like that. They just started using that term, fake news.
Right.
And a lot of his cronies, so to speak, in the White House, his press secretaries, Sean Spicer and what's her name, the governor's daughter. I can't remember, but all of his press secretaries and White House staffs, Kayleigh McEnany and Kelly Conway, they all started using this language and kind of promoting it within what is now the MAGA movement. I don't know that it had a name back then, but yeah, so they kind of invented this idea that became part of the zeitgeist. Fake news is anything about Donald Trump that's negative is fake news, so dismiss it out of hand. And this is a while ago, 2016. That's almost 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So
it's been that long.
We've had a decade of people, a lot of people voting now. They were like 10 years old back then, right? But they're 20 now and they're voting age. And that's all they know. All they know of what fake news is these particular stories that have been told, these horrible lies that have been told about leader Donald Trump, who's a great man, That's fake news. So dismiss anything you hear that's negative about him, because that's not true. That's fake news, and anything that he says, you can take at face value. You can trust him, because he would never lead you wrong. It really is a cult, but that's, to me, that's when I first noticed it starting. So that's not when misinformation first started or disinformation. A lot of 2016, this was also around the time when Russia was interfering a lot in our political system. They interfere in everyone's political system, the cyber ops and various, cyber warfare. Russia has a huge infrastructure built and dedicated solely to that. And so they try to affect the politics of the nations around them all the time, including ours. But they've been doing it before 2016, but that's when it really started coming to light. And they were really kind of buying and selling and promoting these fake news stories through social media, through Facebook, through, various other outlets. And really kind of the idea of it was to sow discourse in the United States, to get people doubting reality, doubting facts. They would be promoting stories that would be pushing both sides of an issue at the same time, just to get us fighting amongst ourselves, because that's kind of what they do. It's like a divide and conquer strategy, and so the news The real news was calling attention to that. Hey, a lot of these stories are fake. They're being generated by Russia, but it became, no, I don't like that story. And by the way, Donald Trump, he's obviously in cahoots with Russia. He has been ever since 2016,
See, now I've always heard that and I've read things about it. But is that's really true?
Well, the only thing we have to go on is the evidence at hand, and so Hillary Clinton kind of first brought to attention this idea she was the first person to run against him. And in my opinion, am I still here? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You broke up for a second
there. In my opinion, Hillary Clinton was kind of a terrible candidate. Yeah, good.
Oh, breaking up again.
Yeah. Hillary Clinton was a terrible. Yeah, she was a terrible candidate for reasons that I think are very different from what like most people on the right would say, because she's an establishment Democrat and part of this dynasty. But one of the truest things she ever said, she was very qualified at the job that she did at the time, which was Secretary of State, and so she was very much in tune with the cyber operation warfare machine that Russia was. She knew Russia more than probably anyone else in politics at that time. And it's very clear that, Donald Trump has economic ties in Russia. He's very friendly and complimentary towards Vladimir Putin, not just him, but other dictators as well,
Right.
He almost appears to idolize the guy. It's like he wants to be Vladimir Putin. He wants what Putin has, and he can't have it in the United States because of the way that our system is designed, but he wants it. He still wants it. And Xi Jinping, the president of China, kind of has a version of that too. And he's very complimentary towards him. He wants to be a dictator, but he's asked Russia for favors before publicly. He wanted, Russia's help. He was on the news asking Russia's help to investigate Hunter Biden,
Oh yeah.
I mean, if anyone else had done that, that would be like the grand conspiracy that would immediately sink their campaign. Right. But it's Donald Trump, and he has a way of speaking and a way of like twisting kind of not facts, but manipulating people with the way that he speaks. He's very persuasive to people that don't have very good critical thinking skills and don't know how to evaluate facts. He knows how to appeal to people's their personal motivations, so he appeals to certain groups of people with the language that he uses. He comes off as the suave businessman who's intelligent, who knows how to get things done. And he's none of those things. No. He's a con artist though, but con artists are very good. They're very good at persuading dumb people. And unfortunately, we have the majority of people who vote in the country are dumb. I don't mean to say that as an insult, and I'm not trying to be flippant, but the average person is not going to fact check everything that a politician says. They're going to listen to how they sound. They're going to look at how they look, how they carry themselves, how quick they are with the one-liners. They're going to look at their gender. Unfortunately, that's still a thing. Donald Trump does not lose to female candidates. He won't, because this country won't vote for a female candidate.
No.
That may be controversial to say, and that's not the sole reason why Hillary Clinton lost. It's not the sole reason why Kamala Harris lost. But the only person that's ever beaten Donald Trump in a general election is an old white man.
Right. I'm tired of all these old white men. We need some new blood.
I don't care what the race, gender, even age of the person is, but when you prioritize an old white man because they're an old white man versus people who are clearly more qualified, clearly better orators, clearly, more in line to go with things like science, don't have a history of racism, don't have a history of corruption. When you still prioritize the guy who has all that because the other person's not an old white man, I know having an old white man is kind of the tradition of leadership in our country, but that's not a good enough reason for a person to be in a leadership position. You have to look at what they bring to the table, and what Donald Trump has brought to the table has been demonstrably bad, but people, they like certain things. There's certain things about him that I think are horrible that other people think are good. He does not like brown people. He does not like, foreigners that are not white. He does not like trans people. He does not like minorities, generally speaking, unless the minority is like an Eastern European and is kind of attractive and he could have sex with them. Those are the only kind of minorities he actually really likes, if you even want to call that a minority. But it's not even him. It's more that he knows that almost 50% of the country agrees with him. And so he kind of plays that up,
Right.
He plays that up. The people he puts in his administration play that up. He picks people specifically because they're racist and, but they're clever about it. They won't actually just go up there and say the N-word, but they'll talk in code. They'll say things, they'll say things to appeal to white supremacists without actually, although, I mean, Elon Musk, man, with his Nazi salute.
I was just going to ask that.
It's almost like they're allowed to do it now, because it's
but
just.
Do you think he really meant it as a Nazi salute? Like, do you
Elon
think,
Musk?
Yes,
absolutely. There's no question.
Really?
Yeah, and the reason why I say that so confidently is because we have to look at the alternative. The alternative is that he was doing a gesture that just happened to look identical to a Nazi salute without realizing what he's doing. This is a guy who's a public speaker by profession, has been in the game for a very long time. He knows that he's being perceived in a certain way already. He has a history of retweeting anti-Semitic tweets that he's had to apologize for and then take his apology back by telling them to go F themselves. He clearly has a history of defamation against Jewish people, as he's been called out by the Anti-Defamation League. He's a 50-something-year-old guy who grew up in apartheid South Africa. Of course he's a racist, unless he's one of those rare cases where he just happens to not be. But all of the evidence points to somebody who would do that, and then try to pretend that they didn't. All of the evidence suggests that if it was somebody else without all of that baggage and all of that history, I might be able to give them the benefit of the doubt, even though it would still be hard. When you watch the video, it's hard to dismiss that as anything other than what it is. I mean, I know people who are German who have looked at that and they were like, yeah, that's clear. If you did, let's put it like this. If you did that gesture anywhere in Germany, you would probably be arrested. We have free speech in this country. They don't have free speech in other countries, but but nobody would do that in Germany because everyone who's German, whether they're Jewish or not, whether they're supportive of, the Nazi party or against it, they all recognized what that was, which is why the Nazis praised him for doing it. When the Nazis think you did it and the not Nazis who are against Nazism think you did it, then you did it. The only people pretending that he didn't are the ones that are like just plugging their ears. No, he didn't. He wouldn't do something like that. He's Elon Musk,
I can't stand the guy. But something you said, I have a whole bunch of, because we got to get into socialism among other topics.
Okay.
But something you said just.
You don't mind if I take a drink, do you?
No, not at all.
Good. I need to relax my nerves after that rant. Carry on.
So I had a conversation with a friend. So to my friend who may or may not be watching, I'm doing my best to accurately portray one of the questions you asked me. So I hope I do it justice. But you made a comment saying most of the people who vote can be dumb, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So with that being said, do you think there should be a line on when people can't vote? And what I mean by that is, let's take the average person. They don't understand the responsibilities of the president. They don't understand the responsibilities of the vice president, Congress, the House of Representatives. So with that being said, why should people who don't understand any of this still vote or still have the right to vote?
Yeah, that's a good question. And actually, my answer to that would be yes, they should still have the right to vote. And the reason for that isn't because it's necessarily a good idea for these people to vote. It's more so that if we start gatekeeping with a fundamental right like voting, then who is to say that the next people who are in charge, the next powers that be, the next administration or Supreme Court or whatever it is, decides that maybe trans people shouldn't have the right to vote, like they're trans, so they're biased, but they're a small 1% of the population and they're clearly deviant. Let's put an amendment in the Constitution that you have to be cisgender to vote.
Okay.
Using the same logic,
Right.
Yes, I personally think that there's nothing wrong with trans people voting, and I do think that there's something wrong with stupid people voting. But but the alternative is to limit people's rights, and I'm always for maximum rights versus minimize. I think that you have to have strong reasons to minimize people's rights, and we don't have enough information. Like, there's no data to tell us that this specific person X is going to vote the way that he's going to vote because he's not intelligent enough to understand like, how do you measure that? There's no objective way to determine that for 300 million people. It's, you know what I mean? And so it's just, you can't take away that right. In fact, I believe that voting should be mandatory. We should do what Australia does and, impose a fine on people who don't vote.
Wait, they do that?
Yeah, voting's mandatory in some countries.
That I don't agree with. I don't think it should be mandatory.
Yeah, I mean, it's because, and the reason, maybe I should elaborate, because the reason I feel that way is that I honestly feel if most people did vote, then, well, if most people voted and we lived in an actual democracy, then we wouldn't have to worry about people like Donald Trump being in power. Because, I was very careful in the way that I worded it. I said that the majority of voters were dumb, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the majority of people in the United States are dumb.
Okay.
What percentage of people in the United States vote, though? Do you know?
No, I actually don't.
It's about half. It's about 50%.
It's really that small?
People. Yeah, it's about 153 to 157 million. The last time I looked it up, there's 300 million people. So that's a little more than half of people who vote. Now, some of that is due to reasons like they are disenfranchised voters. If you've been convicted of a federal crime, and you're in prison, you may not be able to vote. There's a lot of people who don't have full citizenship yet, so they can't vote. So there's a lot of people living here that actually can't vote. There's people under the age too. So I'm including children who are counted in the census, but that still doesn't account for everybody who doesn't vote. A lot of people just choose not to, or they just don't care. Either they're apolitical, apathetic about it, or they think their vote doesn't matter or doesn't count, or they don't know enough. They just choose not to, but if more people did, and they saw the importance of it, and they had the ability to use their voice to affect change, in the way that a representative democracy allows us to do, the outcome would no doubt be different, because there's more liberal leaning people who align to the left in the country than there are people who align to rightist.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I mean, it's always really trending that way. The history, if you go through history, if we ignore the aberration that was 2016 for a moment, because we did take a couple of steps backwards, but every election cycle predating that, probably going back to the history of the United States, the 1770s, when George Washington was elected, the country goes in a more progressive direction. We advance more toward progressivism each passing decade. If you go back 20 years ago and ask people their attitudes on gay people, it'd probably be like 50-50. Now the majority of people support gay marriage and gay rights. Today, the issue is trans people. 20 years from now, more people will be cool with trans people. 20 years ago, it was like this weird thing that, most people would be hesitant about. 20 years before that, it was gay people. 20 years before that, Black people. 20 years before that, Japanese. It's like every generation, the further back in time you go, the more bigoted it gets against groups of people.
Right.
And the further into the future we go, the less bigoted we become overall. So, it's two steps forward, one step back sometimes.
Right.
And, we had a hiccup. Donald Trump to me is a hiccup, but it's a pretty huge one. It's
It's a
really
big
more
one,
like a
yeah.
major gag reflex regurgitation, but sorry.
So I want to save audience questions for the end, but because this was related to what we were just talking about, I think this is an important follow-up. So, question from Puck. Follow-up to that. Since the people who are underinformed are always going to outnumber people who are informed, doesn't this system just set us up for failure?
Actually, yes, that's a good point. And that's something that we should be looking to reverse. And one of the ways of doing that is by getting people more educated. The problem with that is, one, our education system isn't really geared for that. There's not enough of a financial incentive for people to make that a priority. And kind of what we talked about before, the social media, the age of digital social media and misinformation and disinformation kind of poisons what people know. And so, yes, I think that people should know more, and we should kind of, we should make every effort to get people more educated. But we have systems in play. See, one of the problems is education is not necessarily a benefit for, as far as people, let's just, for the lack of a better word, let me just say the Republican Party, more specifically the MAGA movement within the Republican Party, although I think they dominate the Republican Party. I'm not talking about the voters, but I'm talking about the politicians. Having educated voters is not in their best interest. They don't really want educated voters. They want compliant voters.
Yep.
They want voters that they can easily manipulate, that they can sort of con, because they want to stay in power, and to a lesser extent, the same is true on the Democratic side as well. I mean, I would say only the very far left progressives really want more education. The only people talking about free tuition and, social programs for kids in schools are the progressives within the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party at large, that's kind of like on the back burner. It's not something they really care about. They kind of talk about it a little bit when the progressives make them talk about it, but it's not a priority for them. If it was, they would have done it when they were in power, and they've never done it. And the Republicans don't do it either. They want compliant voters. They want to appeal to voters' personal feelings, the things that not progressives, but liberals, I'll say, people on the left side of the political spectrum. They recognize all of kind of the divisive stuff that Donald Trump talks about, and, people on the right who support, deporting people and all of this stuff. And they're like, look how evil they are. You need to stand against that. They're taking people's rights away. They're taking gay rights away. They're taking women's rights away. You need to vote Democrat, And so they always use this tactic of, we're not actually going to do anything for you, but we're going to protect you from the Republicans who are going to take your rights away. And to some extent, they're correct. The Republicans will take your rights away, as we've seen, and that's a trend that will continue. But that's all the Democrats do, and this is why they lose. I almost said the F word, but
you can say the F word if you want to.
This is why they fucking lose all the time. They have no strategy for appealing to what people actually need. Yes, you can talk about how evil these other people are and how they're not supporting women's rights and gay rights and immigrants and Black people and Black Lives Matter and all of that. But what are you actually going to do to progress the world? What are you going to do for education? What are you going to do for healthcare? And they kind of don't, that's just kind of like a secondary thing to most of the Democrats. And that's what progressives want. But they don't ever talk about that. And so the liberal voters in the larger pool, they don't really hear that. And so they don't prioritize that. And so they're just like, a lot of times, just kind of apathetic to the whole thing, They're like, and Republicans, not all Republicans are evil. Not all of them support.
No, absolutely not.
A lot of them are just fiscal conservatives that honestly believe that it makes more sense to cut government spending and, and promote capitalism. And that's what they think is going to improve society for everyone, because they live in a very one-dimensional view of the world, because that's always worked in the past, right? That's worked so well before, but that's how they see it. But unfortunately, and I don't know what the percentage is, but a lot of them are just straight up racists, homophobic, transphobic, bigots who don't want the brown people coming in and taking their jobs and raping everybody, and they're the cause of all the problems, you know. And Republicans are very good at making others the cause of all the problems and scaring people with that, you know. So all the problems in the world, we need to build a wall, you know. We need to stop the Mexicans from coming in because that's what's causing all the problems, you know. All of this DEI, you know, and CRT, you know, all of the plane crashes and everything is because if you stop letting black people, you know, do things that they're not qualified to do and put white people back behind the wheel, we wouldn't have all these problems, you know. And so they create a lot of division, and they do it by appealing to people's innate sense of not liking other kinds of people, you know. That those are the type of people that generally align, unfortunately, towards Republican politics, because the politicians kind of play that up, you know. So they don't want them educated either. They just want to appeal to their, you know, their personal sense of whatever they think is the problem in the country and focus on that, and they're going to take care of that problem. By educating people, which would take care of the real problem, you know, would get people informed how our government works, how other governments work, how our governments work with each other, who the threats out there really are, who, you know, who our allies should be, what they're doing, what our money is going to support. If people knew all of this stuff and cared, yeah, the outcomes would be a lot different. So allocate more funding to education, but when you hire, who's the Secretary of Education right now? A clown, right?
I don't know, actually.
I just looked it up the other day, and let me see. Secretary of Education. Yeah, Linda McMahon, who has nothing to do with education, by the way. She started the WWE Wrestling Federation.
Oh, that Linda McMahon?
Yeah, she's in charge of education now.
How?
Because Donald Trump appointed her. So look, she's an entertainer. He's an entertainer. He came from The Apprentice. She came from WWE. It makes perfect sense that she knows how to she knows how to run a business, right? So she can fix education. You don't have to be educated to be able to lead education. You just have to be a personality, you know?
Right.
And so she's not the only clown in the administration that's in charge of something, but I'm just like, that's my point. Like, they're obviously not serious about education. If they were serious about it, they would put a serious person in charge, you know? Right. So that's kind of my deal on, yes, I agree with you that, or Puck, I think it was the one who asked the question, if, you know, education is the problem, we should be fixing education, but nobody seems to be wanting to do that.
Okay, so we've talked about Republicans, Democrats, progressives. Where do you fall on the political spectrum? Like, how do you identify?
I think most people who know me would probably identify me as a far left progressive. I don't have a problem with that. I think, you know, the terms left and right are somewhat nebulous and kind of open to interpretation. They're relative terms, right? Because left means left of the person who's right of you, you know, and right means right of the person who's left of you. So what does it actually mean? Different countries have a different idea of what left and right is. But in the American system, I would fall probably further to the left than the average Democrat, I would say.
Okay.
But, you know, far left is could be derogatory, because some people think that means you're a communist, you know, you're a full-on, because they're far left too. You know?
I've been called a communist before.
Yeah, but I'm obviously not extreme. I'm not that extreme. I don't support communism, but you know, it's to people who are on the right, it's all the same. Communist, socialist, Democrat, progressive, liberal, like they're all just interchangeable. You might as well just be using the same words, you know. It's only when you get to the left and you start looking at the different positions that you can kind of, you know, see where you align or not. But I would call myself a progressive.
Okay. Is that anywhere near close to, like, or what would be the difference between a progressive, a liberal, and a democratic socialist?
Okay. So this is sort of complicated, but I guess not really. So a liberal is basically someone who there. I would first of all, I would say that all of those people are on the left. They would all be considered on the left of our political spectrum in the United States. You know, they all advocate for liberal or progressive. So what's the difference between liberal and progressive? A liberal is somebody who basically recognizes that the systems are broken and or in disrepair, and they need to be repaired. You know, the systems are not working for the common man, for the average person. We need, you know, higher wages. We need better health care. We need better education, you know, whatever the case may be, housing. And so we need to put in place policies and politicians who are going to improve the programs that we have for the common man. So that's kind of what a liberal is thinking, you know, recognizing that wage gaps exist, income inequality exists, the disparities in law enforcement. And, you know, we need to put people in place that are going to make better decisions and put better policies. That's a liberal.
Okay.
Progressive is someone who also recognizes that these systems are broken, but doesn't have any interest in repairing them. Instead, they recognize that the systems are so broken that they're rotten to the core and they need to be completely overhauled and replaced. You know, the system is broken by design. It's designed to function poorly so that the disenfranchised can't get better. And it doesn't matter which policies you think you're going to put in place, they're going to be circumvented later, replaced by other politicians in the future. The system needs to be overhauled because it's fundamentally broken. We need a new system that actually addresses that, you know. So that's the simplistic answer for what the difference is between a liberal and a progressive. You know, when you talk about progressives within the Democratic Party, you're talking about people who advocate for universal health care. You know, that's an idea that's been out there for a while, but how many people are actually pushing it? How many people in the Democratic Party, you know, the Democrats, what they did was Obamacare, which is better. It's better than what we had before, which was nothing, you know. So 3 million people have healthcare now, thanks to the Affordable Care Act, which is Obamacare. A lot of Republicans don't know that. They don't know that the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, which mostly benefits them, is also Obamacare because they like the ACA, but they hate Obamacare because it has the word Obama in it, you know?
Yeah.
And they don't know the difference. But so that was something. Obama is a liberal. That was a liberal change that, you know, Democrats, they enacted that. 100% got no support from Republicans, but they got a lot of people healthcare, but it's not universal healthcare. I think healthcare, as a progressive, I think healthcare is a right, or it should be a right. It shouldn't be a privilege. It should be a right. I don't know how you feel about it, but
I agree with you. I feel exactly the same.
And there's other countries that have this. You know, if you are any comparable European country, the UK, Germany, you know, if you live in these countries, if you're a citizen and you get cancer, you have cancer treatment available to you. You know, if you're in America and you get cancer, you have cancer treatment available to you if the price is right. That's not how it should be, you know?
Right. So I've heard that one of the reasons the universal health care won't work in this country is due to our gigantic, the size of our population. However, I also recently heard that we actually pay more money than we would if we had universal health care. Can you speak to those 2 points?
Well, the only thing I can say to the first point is that sounds like an excuse with no, I don't know what the rationale is for that, or what the support, the data support is for that. I don't know how they reached that conclusion. And anytime someone says it, I can never get them to elaborate on what they mean by our population is too large to support that. Why would our population be too large to support that? Because the larger the population is, the more income you have funding it. So, right. You know, yes, other countries have employed, I mean, it was employed on the state level. ironically by a Republican. Mitt Romney, I think, did, Romney Care in Massachusetts or whatever state he was the governor of, and people in Massachusetts got, health care. So why couldn't we employ that on a national level? Our population is too big. I don't see, that's almost like a non sequitur to me, unless you can explain how an increase in funding going into a program causes it not to work. I don't understand the logic of that. And so I would put the question on the people making that claim. Our system is too big to support that. What do you mean by that? Why would the size of our population in particular cause it to fail? And can you speak to that? And then I would be able to address specific points. And then the second part of that question, I don't remember what the second part was that you asked me. Could you repeat
ADHD? It went out the brain already.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, it's my fault.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are correct. Can't talk. Are you for higher taxes on the rich?
Yes.
Okay. And to what extent? So let's say someone makes $1 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
How would you want to see that person taxed versus someone who makes $50,000 a year?
Okay, so first of all, before we get into like the specific tax code and what percentage, what rates people should pay, I think the first thing that they should do is address all of the loopholes in the tax code that allows people who have a large income base to not pay taxes, because that's the real problem. That's the biggest problem, I should say. The richer you are, the more you can get away with not paying taxes. And a lot of that is because a lot of their income is considered non-taxable, so there are certain things like your income tax, which is like you go to work, you get wages, you have a steady job, you're a wage worker or a salary worker at a company, you have to pay a certain percentage of tax based on your tax bracket. That's how it works with normal people. Right. For a lot of rich people who make a lot of their money through, for lack of a better term, Wall Street, corporate shares trading, a lot of this is not taxable income, things like inheritance, if you inherit money, I'm not sure that that's taxable. Actually, let me look that up because I don't want to sound like an idiot, right? Inheritance tax, is that a thing in the United States? There is an inheritance tax, but I don't know. I'm not sure what the rate is. But the point I'm getting at is that a lot of it is a lot of the funds that they get is non-taxable. People are very shifty about their income as well. Like they don't report what their actual earnings are. A lot of it is fake money, which means it's not. They liquefy it, and so it's in these certain assets that are not really owned by them, or maybe they are, and it's just like they don't police that. They don't do a good job of policing that. And people who are very wealthy are very good at finding the loopholes in the system that allows them to not pay taxes. I think if everyone actually paid their fair share, this wouldn't be a conversation that would be as loud as it is. It wouldn't be something that progressives would be screaming as loud as they are about, because they would recognize that, okay, they're at least paying taxes. They're at least paying some taxes, but a lot of times rich people aren't paying any taxes. But as far as what the rate goes, I actually don't know. I'm not an economist, and so I don't know what like the average tax rate per bracket has been over the years. Part of me wants to say I think that everyone should have exactly the same tax rate, whether it's 25% or 30%. Just have everybody pay 30% of their income tax.
Oh, okay. Now, so you don't necessarily want richer people to pay more. You're for the same percentage across the board.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think they should necessarily pay a higher tax rate than not rich people, but they don't think they should have to pay equal to what people who are not rich pay. Like if I make $100,000 a year and I pay 30%, somebody who makes $1 million a year doesn't want to pay 30% because That's a lot more money for them,
Right.
you know? And so they're looking at it like I should be paying a lower percentage because the total money that I'm contributing is more. That's what rich people are doing, you know? I when I say rich people, when I say people need to pay their fair share, like billionaires, I'm talking they need to pay the same rate that everyone else pays.
Okay. All right. Thank you for
But they
clarifying.
don't. They pay a lot less than that, you know? On paper, it looks like they should be paying more, but most of their income is not taxable. So they're not paying more. They're paying less of a percentage. They should be paying the equal percentage, which would be much greater input or much greater revenue is what it's called, you know?
So
Now that's me. I can't speak for other progressives or liberals
course.
or anyone else, but that's just my opinion. Okay.
So a lot of people, especially people on the left, will always say, they want rich people to pay more and percentage wise. So one of the questions that came in is, to what extent should bodily autonomy extend to possessions?
None, because possessions are not part of your body. So I'm not sure where the person asking the question was going with that, but bodily autonomy has to do with your body.
Right.
So my car is not my body, my house is not my body, my bank account is not my body. Okay. So the two things are not related to each other. Okay, if it's something happening to my body, then I should have that. Like if I wanted to get a sex change or whatever, I should be allowed to do that. You shouldn't be creating laws that say that I can't get a sex change because it's my body.
Agreed.
That's what we're talking about. Usually when we're talking about bodily autonomy, we're talking about things like abortion, because that's kind of the hot topic since the overturning of Roe v. Wade. But
speaking of that, this is kind of off topic, but what do you say to Republicans when they say they think Trump did a good thing by helping getting Roe v. Wade overturned because I hate ADHD, man. My brain just the question just disappeared because
life begins at conception, or they're pro-life, or whatever the reason.
No, that was that it should be brought down to the state level and it shouldn't be something federally regulated.
I say that that's a BS argument because, look, these are the same people that, on the one hand, they like states' rights when it's a cause that they support, but they don't like states' rights when it's something that they want to have, Mm-hmm. So they want to regulate certain things. The reason they're making that argument is because they're pro-life, or they align with, I'm using pro-life in quotes because that's not a real thing, but that's the real reason they're making that argument. It's not because they think that everything should be delegated to the right of the state, because if that was true, what are they doing right now with do you remember the Defense of Marriage Act? That was the thing that was the thing in 2012, I believe it was overturned by the Obama administration, that prevented gay people from getting married. And so,
okay.
But that was a nationwide federal law that they all supported, the Defense of Marriage Act. Gay people were allowed to get married in California and in Massachusetts, and there were certain states that allowed it, but they instituted a federal law that protected marriage to mean between one man and one woman, because that's what they believe. They didn't leave it up to the states, so they're full of shit. If they actually thought that states' rights were important across the board, they would never have done that. They wouldn't be trying to regulate, that put national bans in place for things like that. They're kind of doing the same thing with, banning. They want to ban trans people from sports, so they want the president to address that. Well, the president's in charge of the country. If it was a states' rights issue, shouldn't you be going to your governor? They don't give a shit about states' rights. They only want states' rights for the rights that they want. But when it comes to the rights of other people, they don't want it states' rights. They want federal bans. So they're just lying.
Okay. So this isn't the topic, but what you just said is something I would like to talk about. What is your opinion? I think the sports system needs an overhaul. And what I mean by that is I think sports should not be sex or gender based, but performance based. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about it because on the substance of it, I tend to agree with you. Fundamentally, sports is about competition, but the problem with that is when you're looking at, I'm a huge tennis fan. I don't know if you're into tennis or not, but
I like playing it. It's fun.
I like playing it too, but I like watching it too. But tennis is one of those sports. It's an individual sport, and it is very much segregated by gender. There's a women's league and a men's league, and that's done because this is one of those sports where it's very clear to see that if you had the women playing with the men, the women would never win. They couldn't, because just the athletic nature of the game is such that it benefits the people who are fastest, the people who have the most endurance, things that testosterone kind of provides you. They don't do testosterone testing in the men's league. They just assume anyone playing in that league, as long as you're male, you're qualified. Whether you can be good or you can suck, you can have more testosterone or less testosterone, but you're playing in this league. And and they segregate it by gender because then how would you make it fair? It would be like saying anyone who has the most testosterone or the most masculine build is the best at this sport, is the best swimmer, is the best track and field person, is the best tennis player, is the best basketball player. Now that may be true, but is that really what we want the nature of competition to be about? Especially in team sports, like, do we want competition to be who's the best physical specimen? Or do we want competition to be who is the smartest, who's the best trained, the most prepared, who can be competitive, If we're just going to say women can never be competitive or biological females can just never be competitive at sports, they would never excel at sports. And so I do think there is something to be said about the segregation by sex. Okay. And so that probably a lot of people on the far left of me, or even equally left of me, might have a problem with that, because then you have the transgender issue, and so the next question you should ask is, do I believe that transgender people should be able to play in the sport of their gender? I don't know if you want to ask that or not, but I'm happy to answer.
Go ahead. That'd be great. And then we'll get right back to politics.
Yeah. And so my answer to that is a bit nuanced, but generally speaking, I think that it depends on the sport. For most sports, for like combat sports, boxing, wrestling, UFC, and also I would add for a lot of the any contact sport, my answer is no. And the reason for that is I honestly don't think it's fair if you have someone who is, let me back that up. Let me elaborate. When I say no, I'm talking depending on when someone transitioned, because we're always talking about biological males and female sports. It's never the other way around. Whenever somebody asks this question, they're not talking about, can a biological female who transitioned to become a male, could she become a boxer? No one gives a shit. No one cares about that at all. They only don't want biological males who transition to be females in what they call women's sports, because the perception is it gives them an unfair advantage. And to some extent, I do agree with that, generally speaking. I think it depends on when the person transitioned. People that transitioned earlier in life and were on puberty blockers and never had the testosterone to develop into fully male, and they maintain low testosterone levels and they're on estrogen, and there doesn't appear to be any significant differences between them, then I don't have a problem with that. And I don't see why anybody should care what parts they had when they were born. The issue is when they transitioned, what their testosterone is, so there are certain sports where, I think your testosterone has to be matched up with just like weight classes. We have weight classes in these kinds of sports. So for a reason, you don't match up even with the same gender. Cisgender male boxing, a lightweight can't box a heavyweight. That's not fair,
Right.
So someone with more testosterone than the average woman should not box a woman with the average level of testosterone or within the natural tolerances.
Right.
So I think it depends. And I think that that's a bullet that certain trans people, not all, but certain we're talking about a very small, tiny minority within a minority, so this is not affecting a lot of people at all, would probably realize maybe sports is not something, because I am the way that I am and I've had to go through this transition. That's one of the things that I'm not able to do professional sports. And I think that that's fair, somebody who had to, who ended up in a wheelchair can't go into professional sports for their medical issues,
Right.
So that's not saying that we discriminate, we're not discriminating against a person because they are who they are. We're discriminating because they have a physical ability or disability that makes them ineligible for that sport. So that's kind of how I feel about that. But that only affects certain sports. There's other sports out there where this wouldn't matter. In my opinion, it wouldn't matter as much.
Okay.
Like rhythmic gymnastics, it doesn't matter what your biology is. Can you twirl the ribbon and do the tumbling or whatever they need to do? Can you be graceful? Subjective sports like that, I don't care what the biological sex of the person was. But contact sports, that kind of makes a difference.
Okay. This is my last off-topic question. Okay. And I'm sorry I'm getting us away from politics, but how do you feel about responsible steroid use? And I'm not talking when it just comes to trans people. I mean, in general, someone competing in a sport. Like, to me, Lance Armstrong, 1, he shouldn't have gotten all his awards taken away. 2, I don't think steroids should be illegal. I wonder if I can say this without getting in trouble.
Well,
okay, I'm going to say it anyway.
Okay, fair enough.
At one point in my life, I was a competitive strongman. Mm-hmm. I won 3rd strongest in Illinois for my weight class, which was pretty badass.
Really?
I eventually got to a point where I was maxed out. I hit my peak. And no matter what I did, I couldn't break through the barrier. So I purchased from a reliable source, pharmaceutical grade. What was it? You know what? I don't remember the name of it, but I couldn't bring myself to go through with it. So I never actually took it, gave it to a buddy. So what is your opinion on the use of steroids in sports?
Okay, so that's a slightly different from what you started asking me, because you started asking me, do I think steroids should be illegal? And I thought you were talking.
Sorry. Yeah, I worded the first part incorrectly.
Okay, so we're just talking about within the realm of sports, right? Not out there. Because I don't care who does steroids on their off time. I don't care who does any drugs in their off time. If you want to do crack, I'm all for that, right? Just go away from me. I don't give a shit. But do I think steroids should be allowed in sports? No. And here's why I don't. And the reason I don't think that are 2. First of all, I'm just curious. When you purchased your whatever you purchased, how much was that?
About $150.
Okay.
Nowadays, it's like the same stuff is around like $600, and it's like a month's supply.
Okay, and it's something you would have to continuously take in order to maintain results, right?
Yes and no. So you can use it to break through your roof.
Is it injectable?
Yes, and you can maintain most of your strength. But yes, you will lose a little bit of it if you cycle off of it. The problem is, to me, steroids get a bad name because people are irresponsible with them. They don't cycle properly. They use bad stuff like, I think it's D-ball. Like that. That's one you want to stay away from. And there's a lot of bad ones out there.
So when it comes this might be a little bit nuanced again, but when I say I have a problem with steroids in sports, I'm not talking about like what you were like bodybuilding, or because I think that's what you said you were doing. Strongman. Okay. When it comes to that, I have mixed feelings about it. But what I'm very clear about is when it comes to sports like basketball, wrestling, tennis, track, swimming, I don't like steroids in those sports because, in my opinion, the whole point of those sports is to see who's the best swimmer. The point of tennis is to see who's the best tennis player, not to see who has the most endurance or who's the strongest, A strongman competition is different because that's the point of that competition. Bodybuilding is different because the point is to be the biggest physical muscular person,
Yeah,
And
you
so
want to be like a sculpture.
yeah. And so if steroids are going to help you do that, and everyone has equal access to it, and it's equally legal for everyone, then yeah, go for it. I don't necessarily really have a problem with that, other than it has health side effects for, you mentioned, people who don't know how to properly do it. I don't know if it's compatible with everybody's body physiology. I'm not a doctor. I don't know as much about that. But I have less of an issue with that than I do with sports that are about like talent, and and also like team sports. Because what do we do with football or soccer if we have 5 players on the team who are roided out and 10 others who are not? Does everybody have to be on steroids? And because if they're not equally on steroids, and only a few of them are, then you're going to have very unequal physical people playing, or you're going to have a league composed of only the people who choose to do steroids. And it's like, what are we doing? Like why not just put them in robot exoskeletons and have them play?
Well, that's a bit of an exaggeration.
I mean, but what's the difference? Like, if you what if a person has a robot exoskeleton and they can afford it, that they're a better player, right?
But that's the thing, is steroids don't turn you into a super athlete. I can't start taking steroids and then go out and start hitting balls like Babe Ruth. It's not how it works. It just increases your natural ability slightly.
Well, but how slightly? And is it equally slightly for everyone? And is that even measurable? I think that's
such a broad question that I can't even answer that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think one of the problems, because it's a chemical substance that's interacting with your biology. And so it interacts with your biology in a certain way, but is it interacting with everyone else's biology in the identical way or a different way? Do they progress at a slower rate or a faster rate or an equal rate? Do they progress further than you or less than you? Is there a way to make this truly fair if everyone's body chemistry is different?
That's a fair point.
And I don't know how to make that fair. Really, I think that's the real issue with it. Lance Armstrong, the reason he had his stuff taken away is because it's illegal, and he was doing it illegally and lying about it. And so if it was legal, what he did wouldn't be a problem. Because frankly, and in some sense, I agree with you that he doesn't necessarily deserve to have them taken. I do think that he won everything, because I'm pretty sure that all of the rest of the people doing it were on steroids too. He just got
exactly. Right. More people take it than you realize.
No, I'm sure a lot of people. I've seen movies that weren't documentaries, but were very Have you ever seen Any Given Sunday?
A long time ago.
Yeah, it's like that movie. Like, I remember I was young when I saw it, and I'm like, that dude's taking steroids. That's illegal. And then the guy who played football next to me was like, dude, everybody takes steroids. What are you talking about? I was like, what? So, that made me realize, okay, this is a prominent thing and it's illegal. I think, depending on the sport, for good reasons. But, if everyone's doing it, can I really say that the person who got caught doing it is immoral? No, they just got caught,
Right.
So, yeah, it sucks for Lance Armstrong that he was the one that got caught.
Agreed.
But at the same time, he should have known better. He was the most famous cyclist in my lifetime. I think he won the most Tour de France. He should have known that maybe he's going to be tested more often than the average cyclist. The person who's number one in the world, or has won the most medals or the most titles, is going to have the most scrutiny on them. So use some common sense.
I agree. All right, back to politics, because we don't have a lot of time left. So next question. Socialist structures can exist in the current economic environment. Example, co-ops, tenant-run housing. Here, you know what? I'm going to put this on screen so you can read it, because it's a pretty long question.
Okay. Let me take another drink while you're doing that.
Okay. All
right.
Do you want me to read it? Oh, go ahead.
I can read. Social structures can exist in the current economic environment. Co-ops, tenant-run housing, people voluntarily entering wealth balancing systems, intentionally opting into private health. Okay. Healthcare programs where they contribute much more than they benefit. If this type of system is truly more beneficial, why do we not see more businesses, rentals, communities, et cetera, demonstrating that? Is there more to that? Oh, that this is a sustainable structure. So go back one, put that back up, and then go to the middle part of that. Yeah. So this is complicated because you asked about why do we not see more businesses doing it. Businesses are about making money, right? And money for their shareholders, money for the people who have stock in that business. And so that's not necessarily a beneficial model for businesses. It's beneficial for people, the consumers. But and then hold on, let me read it again. This type of treatment, why do we not see? Okay, yeah, and that's because the goal of a business is really to make large amounts of money. It's to make personal profit for the shareholders. It's not necessarily about providing the best service to the individuals. Obviously, businesses want to provide goods and services. They want to provide good goods and good services, or at least good enough to keep people invested in it. But they're not charging what it's worth ever. The goal of a business is to charge more than what it's worth, or you advertise that, hey, you're getting your money's worth, but really we're making more money than it costs to provide this service or these goods. That's how we make money, Mm-hmm. When you buy a car, what kind of car do you
have? Chevy Equinox.
Okay. When you bought your car brand new, do you remember how much it was?
I bought it used, $13,000.
Okay. Do you think your car is worth $13,000?
No, not anymore.
Do you think it was worth $13,000 when you bought it?
No.
Correct. How much do you think it was worth?
Probably 9, 10.
About half of that, right?
I don't think it would be that low, but I would say around 8 to 10.
It depends on the car, but it's usually between half and 2/3. But
it's really that low?
Yeah. It would be that low because that's how I'm just using cars as an example, but that's how they make money. It doesn't cost that much it doesn't cost $13,000 to produce a Chevy. Well, it may cost that in today's economy, but whenever you bought your car, and you said you bought it new used, so let's say it was $20,000. It was worth $20,000 brand new when you bought it. It didn't cost that much money to produce that. That's how much they sell it to you for, right. But it probably cost them about half that because they want to make money. So they're going to sell it for much higher. It's the same reason why insulin prices, jump something like 400%.
Yeah, that's insane, man.
The goal is to make money, so whether it's the auto industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the healthcare industry, the education industry, why are people tens and hundreds of $1,000s in college debt? It's not because their education actually cost that much. It's not because they had to pay each of their professors $100,000 for that one student. That's obviously not what it is. It's because it's a business model, and right. They want income. And to do that, you have to take advantage of the disenfranchised people, right? And so socialist systems are about giving a lot of people what they need and not making them pay 2 or 3 times what it costs for that social system. Social systems for the most part are about breaking even. We can go with a simpler example. How much does it cost to fly? Where do you live in Chicago?
Yeah.
How much does it cost for you to fly from Chicago to New York? Commercial.
I'd have to guess that, but probably around $250. Not round trip, just one way.
Just one way? Yeah. And round trip, it would that's actually a lot cheaper than I thought. It would be more than that. For me, it costs a lot more.
I wonder how fast I can Google this.
You can probably Google it pretty fast. I would be willing to say that it would be difficult for you to find a ticket for under $400.
I am so checking right now.
Yeah. Check me. I want to see how good I am. And I am going somewhere with this.
All right. I'm just picking some random dates. Sorry, guys, it's loading.
Yeah, let's. I'll do it on my end too.
come on, load faster.
What do you got? Like
Holy shit.
What is
Okay,
it?
I stand corrected. So yeah, it can be up to like $660.
Okay, $660. Now, if I were to ask you, how much do you think it would cost you to take an Amtrak from Chicago to New York?
Oh, I don't have the slightest clue.
I just Googled it. The first thing that came up was $85.
Oh, that's a big difference.
Do you know why?
No.
Why is it so much cheaper on Amtrak? I know it's a train, so it's slower. It's going to take you longer. But is it $500 and $15? Is that a $515 difference? Because Amtrak's goal is not to make a profit.
Wait, really?
Amtrak is a government program. It's not a
So
company.
they don't really, so they don't try to make any money. I didn't know that.
Not really. They make enough to maintain the system.
Okay.
I think some years they make money, some years they lose money, but it's a service provided to citizens, which is largely what it is. That's why Amtrak tickets are so cheap. If you were to buy a ticket on Amtrak from New York to San Francisco or Seattle, it wouldn't be a whole lot more than that. Anyone can go from New York to Seattle on Amtrak, maybe $100, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, depending on when you go. It's coach class, and it's going to take you a long time, but you can get there. That same trip in Canada, for example, if you were to go from Toronto to Vancouver, which is roughly the same distance, they don't have a national rail line. They have a for-profit rail line. It would probably be like $1,000, similar to the plane fare, because we have a national rail service and they have a for-profit rail service. We have a for-profit airline industry, though. So the point, I'm saying all this to say, Amtrak is essentially a socialist system. It's not a socialist system, but it's a social program, so to speak. It's a government program that's providing a service to citizens across the nation, the service of transportation. And that's really what it is,
That actually leads into my next question. Can you give some more examples of socialistic-like programs in the United States?
Yeah, and I want to be careful with our terminology and our usage, because socialism is really an economic, it's really a political system that has that affects economics. It's not so much an economic system, but it's a political system, and also it's not. You can't really isolate it down to specific programs. There are social programs that would exist in great quantity in a socialist system, and we have some of them here, and we lack. There's others that could be social programs. So I tend to use the phrasing social programs instead of socialists, because socialist implies that you live in a socialist political and economic system, which we don't, right?
Okay.
But do we have social programs that mirror what you would expect to find in a purely socialist society? Yes, we do. We have, so I already mentioned Amtrak is one. A lot of the a lot of the services that we take advantage of every day without even thinking about it, like law enforcement, your police, who funds the police?
Well, it's a social program, isn't it? Taxpayers.
Your tax dollars go to fund the police, right? What about public schools?
Same, and military.
The military. Yeah, so all of these different things. And now private schools exist. You don't have to send your kid to a public school. You can send your kid to private school, but you're going to be paying a private company to make use of that. And the private school may be better. It may be not as good, but you have the option, right? The same thing should be true about healthcare. We should have a public option and private options. The entire healthcare industry shouldn't be privatized, because healthcare, as I said, should be a right, not a privilege. That's my personal opinion. But other countries do this. I don't know why we can't. The police service should be a social program. It shouldn't be for-profit police. The fire department shouldn't be for-profit. It shouldn't be the case to where your neighbor's house is on fire and you call the fire department and they respond, oh, but they haven't paid their fire bill this month. They haven't paid their bill to this fire department, so we're just going to let that house burn down. No, they should come down and put the house out, because
Right.
that's publicly funded. And so, yeah, there's a lot of things that are social programs, even just on a personal, individualistic level. I mean, Medicare, Medicaid, things that people pay into that. So, for example, do you know what Medicare and Medicaid are?
I'm aware of them, but I can't
You know
go
what the
into a
difference is?
detailed. I don't know the difference. No.
Yeah, Medicare is for older people, like your people of retirement age. It's a supplemental income to support medical bills that would come up, or things that they would have to go get seen because they're aging and they're more likely to have to go to the hospital or need care, right? So
Right.
Medicare is kind of the social program that helps fund that, so that people who are of age, who have a Medicare Part A or Part B or whatever card is necessary, they qualify for Medicare benefits, they can have that service, that medical service, paid for by that program. So it's for people of a certain age. So theoretically, if you live long enough, you will have access to Medicare, right?
It's 65, isn't it?
I don't know if it's 62, 65, 67. I think it's in your 60s though, right? So that's Medicare. Medicaid is for people who are disabled, or not necessarily of retirement age, but either you have some kind of disability to where you need to be seen, so it's for that. It's basically but not everybody is going to qualify for that, right? That only affects a small subset of people in the country, people who have certain disabilities or healthcare abnormalities that are unique and congenital or whatever. But not everybody takes advantage of that, but you still pay into that, right?
Right.
And now, actually, I need to back up because I'm not sure if that's 100% true. You definitely pay into Medicare. Maybe you don't pay into Medicaid. I'll have to look that up, back up. I'll have to look that. But the point is, those are both social programs, right? People pay into the Medicare for sure. Here's another one, Social Security, right?
Just real quick, I Googled it real quick. It said, no, generally individuals don't pay into Medicaid the way they do for Medicare.
Okay, yeah. So Medicaid was a one-off, but that is the difference between them. I know that Medicare is something that everyone pays into because theoretically, anyone who lives long enough will have the opportunity to take advantage of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you may not, but you still paid into it, right?
Right.
Because the money exists to take care of these older people. That money comes from you. It comes from me. It comes from everybody who has a job, who their check automatically takes out for Medicare. Whether you get to see the benefit of it or not depends on how long you live. You may or you may not. But That's a socialist type program, if we're going to use the language. Mm-hmm. Social Security is the same thing. That even has the word social in it. Social Security. The Social Security benefits that people get now at their age, if you're of retirement age and you're collecting on Social Security, where does that money come from?
Well, from us, but it's not a lot of money. Like, I don't know how we in this country expect people to survive off that.
Well, I don't know if we do expect people to survive off it. I think it's viewed as supplemental income. The idea is they were supposed to have saved up a retirement, and this is like their supplemental to deal with inflation and unexpected whatever, But the point is,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying all that to say that money comes from us. They are able to take advantage of that money because we pay into it. It doesn't go to us. It goes to them.
Right.
When we get that age, the people who are working and paying into Social Security, that money goes to us. So that's how that works, Okay. So that's a socialist program because you are paying into something that you may or may not take advantage of, but people in your society can take advantage of. The people with the need are the ones where that money goes to.
Do you think it's wrong that let's say one of my a member of my family, they're collecting Social Security. They get $1,200 a month. Now, that's not even enough to pay rent in a single apartment. Do you think it's fair that we just expect people to be able to save their entire lives to be able to cover the rest of their life without fully needing Social Security benefits?
No, that's the short answer. No, I don't think it's fair. And the reason it's like that is because we have unnecessary, well, things that I consider to be unnecessary expenses and things that we pay for that we shouldn't have to pay for. If we didn't have to pay for it, first of all, most people are in debt. Most people, when get to a certain age or status in life, a lot of them are in debt. You have to be very fortunate or come from a very good, fortunate background, I'll just put it that way, to not end up in debt in order to get your start in life. If you've gone to college, most people who go to college are in debt, student loan debt. You have to be lucky enough to not have had a medical setback to where you ended up in debt.
That happened to me.
There you go. It happened to, so like most people, between medical bills and tuition, the average adult doesn't, a lot of their income is going to expenses that they can't really afford. Who can do a savings? Who can save money in this economy? First of all, they don't teach that anymore unless you go to college to learn economics and personal financing. I'm not aware that they teach this, and this is not a mandatory class in high school, unfortunately.
No, it should be.
Yeah. But that's not taught. And, it's also not something it's like, why would they teach you that? Why? Because the goal is to make money. It's an institution. It's a money-making institution. So we have all these expenses as we get older and older, partially because of that, partially because inflation, partially because a lot of the revenue that our government does intake is not allocated to the right things. We could fund Social Security, we could fund Medicare, we could fund tuition if we allocated our funds correctly, but we don't. What do we spend our money on? What does the United States primarily spend its money on?
Isn't it the military?
Defense spending. And I need to clarify here, because you just said military, and because a lot of people, when they hear the term defense spending, they think military. They use them synonymously, right?
Okay.
But defense spending is not necessarily military. Military is a subset of defense spending, which means part of defense spending goes to the military. It goes to the soldiers and airmen and sailors, their paychecks and housing and all that. The majority of it does not go to that, though. The majority of it goes to defense contractors, which are corporations who make weapon systems and aircraft and tanks and sell them to the United States government and to other governments for profit. So this is called the military industrial complex. This is where defense spending exists to support corporations that are in the defense industry. That's where most of our money goes to. And it's a damn shame. And this is another area where Republicans and Democrats, the people in Congress, they're both in cahoots because they both support this system, which is a waste of our taxpayer dollars, in my opinion. I know you want to ask another question, so I'm going to stop there. But
no, continue, please.
Well, no, I was just going to, because this is something that we see a lot of people on the left would be quick to blame people like Donald Trump and George W. Bush, especially, and all the Ronald Reagan, all the Republicans that throw all this money into defense, took all of our money out of healthcare and education and put it all in defense. But the Democrats are not a lot better. They're all doing it. And the proof of that is Joe Biden. Who was his Secretary of Defense? It was Lloyd Austin. Do you know what Lloyd Austin's other job was?
Mm-mm.
He was on the board of directors for Raytheon, one of the largest military contractors. So that's kind of a conflict of interest, right? You have the guy,
absolutely.
You have the guy in charge of making defense policy for national security on the board of directors for a major defense corporation. Of course, he's going to be pro-war. They're all warmongers. War is good for business. They want war, or at least the threat of war, so that they can keep funding their pocketbooks, because they all have stocks in Raytheon and Lockheed and all of these other corporations. So that's why our government, people in both parties, are pro-war.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
We're giving billions of dollars to Israel right now to do basically what I think is a genocide, or at least an ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. Israel is a country that has universal health care. Israel is a country that has free tuition. We don't have any of that shit, and we're giving them money. Think about the logic of that. It
doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. If it was really about Israeli security, they would be funding their own genocide. You know, if the Palestinian goat herders were that much of a threat to them, if every man, woman, child, and infant in the Gaza Strip is Hamas, then why isn't Israel reallocating their own resources away from free tuition and free healthcare to help fight, you know, these evil babies that are trying to destroy Israel? Why aren't they doing that? Why are they asking the United States money for bombs so that we can bomb the babies when they have free tuition and free healthcare? And this is something that was not addressed by the Biden administration. You know, Obama didn't stop it. Clinton was doing the same thing. So it's not just Republicans; it's all of them. So yeah, But anyway, I went off on a tangent. You asked.
No, that's fine, dude. I learned so much from you. So I tangent away. We only got a couple minutes left. So for all the people that submitted questions, I know there's a bunch I didn't get to. I apologize, but we covered a lot of topics and kind of went all over the place. But hopefully everyone's happy with it. For my Republican friends, can you give me 3 good reasons why they should have never voted for Donald Trump?
Well, it depends. When you say Republican friends, it depends on what their priorities were, because sometimes people label themselves as Republican because of a lot of the things that Donald Trump said he was going to do that he did do. I mean, there are certain accomplishments that Donald Trump has. They're all bad, in my opinion, but a Republican might say that they're good, like spending billions of dollars to build a wall that apparently has not stopped a single Mexican person from getting, or South American person or Central American from getting into the United States, Oh,
it's pointless.
Pardon?
The wall is pointless.
The wall is obviously, it's a political statement more so than an actual tangible thing that's going to solve any problem. The idea of the wall was what it symbolizes, but Mexico didn't pay for that, which was the promise.
I remember that.
So I would ask,
the wall and Mexico will pay for it.
Yeah. So my first question would be to the Republican: are you happy that there's a wall there? Did that solve any tangible problem in the United States that you've had to deal with in day-to-day life? Or did it just take money out of the United States towards something that serves no practical purpose? If you're happy about that, cool. I think that was a waste of money. I think we could have reallocated that to somewhere else. Are you happy about the way that Donald Trump handled the COVID-19 crisis? Do you think he did a good job with that? When he was telling people it'll go away when it gets warm. It's just like the flu. It's not that bad. Don't wear masks. When you be saying all of this stuff publicly and then in private telling journalists that this was going to kill, 500 million people. I mean, was that a good thing? If you think that was a bad thing, maybe you should have reconsidered that. If you think that it was good, and responsible to promote not masking, not social distancing, keeping everything open when people were dying of COVID, if you're a Republican who knows someone who died of COVID, you may want to rethink that. That may not have been good for you. If you are a minority who voted for Donald Trump, this is something I probably don't even have to explain, because there's a lot of people. I've been reading a lot of stories about immigrants, legal immigrants, Latino immigrants who were Trump supporters, but all of a sudden ICE is knocking on their door, harassing them, and basically threatening to deport them. And they're like, I regret voting for Trump. And I'm like, yeah, you should. Like, what did you think was going to happen? You thought that you were one of the special Latinos that weren't going to be racially profiled and weren't going to be targeted by ICE? Of course they're going to do that. That's how they do it. They start by racial profiling. So if you thought that you were special or different, that wasn't a very intelligent thing to do. So I don't have to explain to them why they made a mistake in voting for Trump, because all it did was make their lives more difficult. And I'm talking about the legal immigrants.
Right.
As far as the illegal immigrants go, a lot of them have been deported and a lot of them have come back. I talk about how I'm not on social media a lot. Every now and then I look at Instagram, and one of the last things I saw was a dude who had gotten deported, who's right back in Las Vegas like 2 weeks later or a month later, celebrating. He's like, yeah, bitch, I got deported. I'm back here. So what was accomplished, you know? Now, I'm not saying that that guy voted for Trump. He probably didn't. But the guy who's being harassed by ICE, who's the lawful citizen of Latino descent, he voted for Trump, and he's like, what was my vote for, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah, other minority. Look, if you're a woman and you voted for Trump, you must not care about your rights, you know? You must not, you must be just okay with men deciding, you know, if you should remain pregnant or not. Um, I suspect that a lot of women of non-childbearing age would be primarily the Trump supporters, but there's a lot of women who are younger and they probably voted for Trump and probably got pregnant and can't get an abortion now because you live in a state where it's outlawed, and you know there's so whatever. There's a lot of people out there who may have regrets. I don't understand Black people who vote for Trump. I don't understand gay people who vote for Trump. I don't know what
Me neither.
not only Trump, but any Republican, because name the Republican policy that's beneficial for African Americans specifically, or the gay community, or the trans community, or any like minority group. Can you name the Republican policy that benefits that community? Because I can't think of one. I can name a lot of Democrat policies that do, you know, but certainly the positions that Republicans advocate for, that's maybe not in your best interest. And so, yeah, you can't, sometimes you have to let people feel the pain. And this is why I say, you know, people who were not for Trump being elected, if you aligned with the Democratic Party or leftist or progressive, and you were discouraged by the fact that Trump was elected again, you know, 91 criminal charges, 2 impeachments, really on paper, one of the worst presidents of all time, that the American people elected him again, or I should say the Electoral College elected him again. You know, if you're discouraged by that, look, don't hang your head too bad. Sometimes people need to feel the pain in order to recognize the error of their ways. You would have thought that it would have been enough in 2016, but I guess not, you know? So let's see if he does what he said he was going to do that's going to benefit you. You know, you voted for Trump because the economy. How's that working out for you? Let's see in the next couple of years, you know, what the price of eggs was too high under Biden. How's the price of eggs now, you know? Well, how's gas prices now? Since you think the president directly controls all this, or his policy, well, in this case, he did because of the tariffs. How's that working out for you? And that's just the question that I would ask. You know, if your pocketbook is the only thing that you care about, you don't care about other people's rights, you don't care about women, trans, right, whatever. If it's just your pocketbook and your economics, how did it work out for you?
Right.
It's too soon to tell. He's only been president for a year. Let's take a look in 3 years to see if, you know, I mean, do you honestly think that you would have been worse under Kamala Harris? And if so, how? What policy did Trump do that made the economic situation better than what Kamala Harris was promising to do? That's the thing. And when you ask them specific questions like that, they all of a sudden they have to change the subject because they can't answer that. You know, it's because it's a perception. It's a perception of Donald Trump being a savvy billionaire businessman deal maker. And he's none of those things, but that's the perception. Mm-hmm. And the other perception of Kamala Harris being one, an establishment Democrat candidate, and two, a Black woman. Really, her being a Black woman is kind of enough, you know. Mm-hmm. That's kind of enough to be a no-go for most people. It's sadly because if it was an asset, almost all Democrats or all leftists would have voted for her. But the reality is a lot of them don't want to see a woman in charge. A lot of them don't believe in it. You know, it's still that old school mindset. Women are not supposed to be in charge making these kinds of decisions. They're bad at it, you know.
It's fucked up.
It is, but I mean, it is what it is. You know, it has to, the way, and by the way, Biden messed up. Because what he should have done was step down as president when he was clearly unfit in his 3rd year and definitely his 4th year. He should have stepped down and let Kamala Harris let the vice president assume the presidency because the president is no longer fit. Then she would have been the first woman president, and she would have had at least a year, maybe 2, to prove that, yeah, a woman can do this job, can do it effectively.
It's true.
And it would have changed mindsets, but that's how it's going to happen. You know, people don't want to vote for a woman because they don't believe in it. But if they see a woman doing the job effectively, that could change mindsets. Absolutely. So in the future, we might vote for a woman.
So I have two last questions. I'll try and keep them as short as possible so I can let you go. I don't want to continue taking up all your time. But first, do you think we should eliminate, or what is your opinion on eliminating the Electoral College and strictly having vote based on the people?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
The short answer is yes. The Electoral College should not have ever existed in the first place, but it definitely shouldn't exist now.
Okay.
A lot of people don't even know what the Electoral College is or what it does, and I'm not sure how familiar you are with it, but it's a sham democracy. It's not even, I can't even use the word democracy. We don't live in a democracy. We live in a constitutional representative republic, but it's a sham constitutional representative republic because you have aristocrats, these people in positions of power and authority who vie for positions in the Democratic Party and in the Republic Party to be electors in these different states, and so it's elites who are making decisions on behalf of all of the rest of us. That's what the system is. Each state has a certain number of electors based on the size of its population. Every state has 2 senators. Larger states have more representatives. Smaller states have less representatives. Representatives plus senators equals electors. So California has 55 representatives and 2 senators or something like that. So that would give them 57 electors in an election. Delaware or Rhode Island has 2 senators and probably 3 representatives, or maybe less. I don't know. But they have, your representatives are based on the size of the population of the state. Everybody gets 2 senators. You combine the senators with the representatives. That tells you how many electors your state has. So when they do the general election, the majority of votes in California, if they went to Joe Biden, that means that all of the electors are supposed to vote for Joe Biden, 100% of the electors, because they agreed to do that. They took a pledge and took an oath to the Democratic Party saying that, yes, we will vote for Joe Biden if the majority of Californians vote for Joe Biden. Okay. Or if the Republican went, that's not going to happen in California, but in Texas, all the Republican electors, the Republican Party electors, they all took a pledge. We will vote for Donald Trump if the majority of Texans voted for Donald Trump. There's nothing that guarantees that they do that. There's nothing in the Constitution or enshrined in any law that says that they must do this. It's just something that they agree to, Mm-hmm. So it's an inherently corrupt system because it's an aristocracy. Usually the people, but it's certainly not representative of like the population of the United States either, right? Because you have states that, like, clearly this last election, Donald Trump won the election. He won the popular vote and he won the Electoral College. And so there's really no disputing it. But 2016, that was not the case. He lost the popular vote in 2016. He won the Electoral College because he won more states, or I should say he won more electors, so to speak, because the Republicans, you have to win more states because the size of their populations are smaller. But he ended up winning the Electoral College in 2016, but the majority of the people voted against him. That's kind of fucked.
It really is.
You certainly can't use the word democracy in a system that allows for the majority of people to not have the winning outcome, and so I don't think that that's right. But I also don't think that that having electors in the first place is right. It should be direct proportional representation, Mm-hmm. It should be your vote directly goes to, like, I think Switzerland, that's like a true democracy. Like every voter in Switzerland, they can vote on their own laws. They don't need Congress to introduce, but they do referendums and the people vote for them. So they know.
So cool.
Yeah, that's to me, that's better because that's representative of what the people want. But there's positives and negatives to it, but it's mostly positives. I do think that certain things should be certain rights should be enshrined in the Constitution, and the majority shouldn't necessarily have the ability to overturn those rights. But beyond those rights, that Bill of Rights, I think it should be what the majority says. And unfortunately, our system is not like that.
No, it sucks. Well, I want to thank you. I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. You are a brilliant individual, my friend. So I really appreciate you taking the time
I'm
out.
trying. It's a little bit every day, hopefully. Every time I think I'm wise or smart about something, or someone tells me that, I agree for a couple of minutes because it makes me feel good in my own head. And then I turn on the news or I turn on something and I learn something new. I'm like, how the hell did I not know that? I'm a dumbass, like I still have a lot to learn about certain things.
The smartest people always think they're not the smartest.
It's because I want to keep learning. Like, I know that there's stuff out there. There's people who are truly brilliant who know way more than me. And I want to know all of these things, and the facts. I'm more aware of the things that I want to know that I don't know than I am with the things that I know. You know what I mean? It's like I'm aware of so many things that I wish I knew about and I understood better. And so because of that, I'll say this, and this is the way that I'll take the compliment. Because I'm someone who values knowledge and education, and I'm still learning and seek to learn, I think people like that have the right to be called intelligent, because that's an intelligent thing to do. So if you're calling me brilliant and intelligent because I'm a knowledge seeker, then I'll take that compliment. And I think the same thing is true about you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing this interview.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
so we're both
that.
Strong knowledge seekers and looking to improve our understanding of the world so that we can better it. That's Absolutely. What makes us good people, I think.
Well, I'll take that compliment from you. So thank you. Do you have anything coming up you want to promote?
Not particularly, although, excuse me. Do you know Objectively Dan?
Absolutely. Worked with
you guys. You guys are friends, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he reached out to me a little while ago and asked if I wanted to do something on his show. And I agreed and said yes, because I do. I haven't heard from him yet, so I don't know if his schedule got busy or if he forgot. I'll probably send him a message to just remind him, hey, I'm still available or whatever. But that could be potentially coming up. I think it kind of, he either forgot about it or his schedule got a little bit too busy. But that's something that, when that happens, I'll certainly let you know.
Yeah, please do. I'd love to watch it.
I've only done a call-in show a couple times. I think the last one was with him, and that was like a while ago. And so those are always interesting because, live interaction with people. I haven't talked about religion in a long time, but I can get back to that as well. I have lots of thoughts.
I miss my call-in show, man. Perspective.
What are you doing? You should go back to it.
I'm going to at some point. It's just, it was so much work.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, it was a lot. So anyways, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you, Bryce, so much for taking the time out of your night to do this. I really appreciate it. It's been a very informative interview. Thank you to all my patrons. Apologies that I didn't get to all your questions. Thank you for all the comments. Bryce, if you could just stay on the line, and sure. I'm going to close out the show. Good night, everyone.